All right, this is One-Eyed Jax, and I finally have the microphone is now working. All right, this is One-Eyed Jax part 50. We had some technical difficulties yesterday with the microphone. Hold on.
Hey, we've had a problem here.
Yeah, we had a problem, all right, and I called NASA, and they sent me over a super top secret microphone so we can get this recorded now. And I was so angry at the end of it because I actually ended up doing that video 3 times. I never do these videos 3 times. I do them in one take. I know that's shocking to hear, but Kubrick loved editing and filmmaking, and I'm not, I'm trying to slog my way through it and get this done, but it is what it is. I'm not that great at making videos. But anyway, here's the video I tried to make last night, and it's called One-Eyed Jax, and it's one of the main themes. And we have all these threads and clue sets that repeat themselves over and over again, and clearly One-Eyed Jax is one of them. So let's do this. Let's minimize that. Oh wait, before I shouldn't have minimized that. Yeah, hang on. I missed this in the last video. It's one of the main clues, and I totally missed it. The moon, the patterns in the moon mimic the shape of a rabbit. So in the puzzle, we have One-Eyed Jax, and we have Jack Nicholson and Jack Kennedy, and all these Jacks. Okay, so we have Jack Elam. Jack Elam, his last name is a palindrome for male. So it turns out a male rabbit is a Jack, and a female rabbit is a hare. So we have Jacks and hares. This theme of the two genders of animals is repeated. When we go to the moon, we have the mare, which is a female horse. Then we skip into play girl bunny, which would be Sylvester Stallone, and he's in Rocky, and he's a Italian stallion. So we have the mare and the stallion. Then we go into Star Trek, The Cage, the first episode that never aired, that the censors didn't like, and we have Yeoman Cole, a redhead. So this we have, and then we go into Dr. Strangelove, and you have Buck Turgidson. So a buck is a male deer, a doe is a female deer, a jack is a male rabbit, a hare is a female rabbit. So we're on the moon, okay, and we got the jade rabbit, the jackrabbit that's on the moon. This is the Chinese call it the jade rabbit. And we only ever see one face of the moon. So the moon rotates in perfect synchronization with its orbit. So it's like a camshaft in a car. It never loses its sync, which is just bizarre anyway in itself. But my point here is, since we only ever see one face of the moon every day, we only see one eye of the jade rabbit, which is a jack, a one-eyed jack. So, this is one of the main things in the puzzle, and I really haven't focused on this in the past. I just go, the moon's a one-eyed jack, and I don't really explain it. But that's the explanation of the one-eyed jack moon. So there's our first one-eyed jack, and it's a big one because it's right in the, Kubrick fakes the moon missions and yada, yada, yada. So let's close that out. Here's Danny only plays one organized game in the movie The Shining, and the game is darts, and the dartboard has a one-eyed bullseye. And I want to show you something. Hold on one second. Okay, here's the picture. Here's the picture I wanted to show. I love this new software. I'm getting better at it. I could never pause the videos. Now I can pause them. It's amazing. But anyway, what I wanted to show you here and is the hidden symmetry that we see throughout Kubrick's puzzle. We see 24 pictures back here, 8 by 3. And in these pictures, we can see hidden symmetry. If you look at this photograph right here, and this photograph right here, they're identical. If you look at this photograph right here, and this photograph right here, they're identical. If you look at this one, and you look at this one, they're identical. So when I said earlier that there's hidden symmetry throughout this movie, I wasn't blowing hot air out my ass. And this is a very interesting room. This is called the games room. So when Danny goes back to see Jack, he says, are you done blowing up the universe, Danny? He goes, yeah, Dad. Well, there's no video games in here. So it turns out, this puzzle always works on first. So the first video game ever was Pong. So we have Roman ping pong, and we have, so we have Ping as a golf manufacturer, and so we see these 24 pictures back here, and we see hidden mirroring, almost like this is a frame of a movie, and this is another frame of the same movie, a 24th of a second later. And the odd thing of this wall is, of course, it's mirrored. So there's your anything that's mirrored, doubled, palindromed is a clue. So this entire wall is mirrored, and on one side of it we have the 50-state flag. The other side of it we have one state, Colorado, and we have 24 photographs on both sides of it. And in the middle we have three larger photographs, and then above them we have one photograph by itself. And this photograph almost looks like a montage is kind of what it reminds me of. Somehow we're combining these three frames, a trinity of frames, and we're creating one new frame. And this is all hypothetical. I don't have an answer to this yet, but I know Kubrick would have made this, and he's clearly giving you clues to something here. So we have 24 frames here. We have 24 frames on the other side of the wall. They mimic each other. We have hidden symmetry in here. We have hidden pairs. This puzzle works on making pairs and triplets and flushes, and another odd thing about this image is there's a stereo speaker on the right and there's a speaker on the left. So we have stereo sound, we have a clock in the center, so somehow this whole thing is tied together by using time, and we have a combination of three images are used to make one new image. So this is fascinating for me anyway. Maybe I'm crazy, I don't know, who could say. But we have the one-eyed bullseye on the dartboard, and we have the number 13. This is a clue to Apollo 13, and it launches on. It's Apollo 13. The explosion happens on April 13th at 1300 hours. It launches at 1300 hours, and so it's 13, 13, 13, 13. It's Apollo 13, April 13th. It launches at 1300, and it has an explosion at 1300. So 4 13s is 52 cards in the deck. So this one little photograph has a ton of information here. We have the bullseye, we've got the Apollo 13 clue, we've got the ski posters, which is Monarch Mountain and Mammoth Mountain, built on an inactive volcano, just like Mount Hood. We have a stereo speaker left and right. We have the 50-state flag and a one-state flag. We're using the state birds, and we're using, the Torrances live in boulder, and rocks and stones are a thread. So let me get off this picture. I know I got a little off track here, but this is your one-eyed Jack bullseye, one bullseye in the dartboard. Here it is again, and you can see the hidden mirroring. The needle has only one eye, and we're giving these clues to Quilty and Sigourney Weaver and Hugo Weaving and the Terrier and Theseus and the Magic Thread and the 3M Scotchlite, bolts of 3M Scotchlite fabric were hand sewn together to complete the Apollo fakery. And you have the explosive bolts. This would be Jupiter's explosive lightning bolts. And so in Kubrick's puzzle, we have the 3M explosive bolts of 3M fabric, the fabric that has tiny spheres of glass on them that reflect light. And so we have the one-eyed needle. So we jump, hip, hop, and skip, and we're over into Back to the Future 2, I believe this is. It could be 3. It's 2 or 3. And we have needles. Now, needles didn't appear in Back to the Future in 2 or 3. Needles was in the first one. He's the guy driving the pickup truck, and I have pictures of that. Let me set this aside. When we get the Needles pictures, we'll go through them. So he's a one-eyed Jack. He's got one eye, and he's in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So the pepper is the New Mexico state vegetable, and you have the Lonely Hearts Club Band and Sergeant Pepper's, and the way this puzzle works is we pepper these very alchemical clues wherever we're going, and there's always a bunny we're following, or there's always some thread that we're following to get there. So Needles is a bass player. He's a musician. So it's just one of Apollo's attributes is he's a musician. He plays the lira. And so this is Douglas Needles. This is the July 4th Overlook Ball. And, of course, July 4th is the birthday of the United States. It's the birthday of our country. So it's a birthday clue. And also this man here is Woodrow Wilson. with a mustache, and he sold our country down the road. And I've said before, this man looks amazingly like Nikola Tesla, and he appears to be over 6 feet tall. Nikola Tesla was a very tall man. Nikola Tesla also wore a mustache very much like this when he was a young man. So I can't prove it's Nikola Tesla, but it really looks like a young Nikola Tesla. And he was a flat earther. So, am I wrong? Who really cares? Doesn't matter. Here we have the Mars Attacks movie, and we have the azimuthal equidistant map. And this is Jack Nicholson, a one-eyed Jack, and he's standing on the bullseye. So it's a one-eyed Jack there. This is a clever one. I showed this earlier in the video series. This is a display case, a glass display case, and inside the glass display case is a fossilized fish. And Kubrick has inserted a fisheye lens in one of its eye sockets, so it's a one fisheye fish. So let's close that. Let's minimize that one. I want to go over that one later. So Danny plays darts. Here's all the ski posters I mentioned, and I have not identified them all, but there's numerous ski. Here's the ski poster. Here's the ski poster. One, two, three, four, five. I think this is So there's no skiing at the Overlook. We're told this in the interview, and yet we see ski posters everywhere, and we actually see a gentleman with cross-country skis in the lobby when Jack walks through it. It's very hard to see. He's by the elevator. He's waiting for the elevator, and he has a a ski bag, and he has his cross-country skis in there and his poles. So that's where we get snow pole. And this is clever fan art. I've gone over this before, but now that we know a little more and you're more familiar with the puzzle, Danny is born on 1/1, New Year's Day. It's a holiday. It's the first day of the year. So this is a first clue. And he holds up his one finger, and the happy birthday clue is mirrored. So a mirror of Danny is Salinger. Salinger's born on 1/1. Betsy Ross makes the first flag. She's born on 1/1. So we have the flag-covered wagons. We have the U.S. flag with 6 out of 7 stripes. You got 6 white stripes, 7 red stripes, or vice versa. It ties into John Malkovich's picture where I think he dresses up like Betsy Ross, but I could be wrong. But he dresses up like a woman, and there's a flag there. I didn't want to do that. Here we have the 33 segment azimuthal equidistant UN map. And if you notice in this map, there's no indication of the geology and the shoreline of Antarctica. It's completely omitted. It's missing. So what takes its place is Apollo's laurel corona that surrounds us. So this laurel corona here, one of Apollo's attributes, represents Antarctica. And the big clue in this is it has one bullseye. John Carpenter is a one-eyed Jack, and I am convinced this movie is alchemical. In the movie, he actually lands on the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, with his glider, and he's got the one eye. And right away we have a one eye, we have a Mouseketeer, we have a man that wore the Woody Strode hat in The Thing, a movie about Antarctica, and he's Snake Plissken, so he fits right in with our Sidewinder and our Bruce Boa and Alex's boa, and the boa we see in Blade Runner, and the boa we see in Star Wars, and the Apollo Simulation Project, the ASP, which the ASP is also heard in the song by REM. He talks about the horrible ASP. If you believe we put a man on the moon, he talks about the horrible ASP, ASP. ASP is the Apollo Simulation Project, and it's also a poisonous snake, so it fits right into our puzzle. So this movie is alchemical, and I'm going to have to, I got to watch it. But, so once again, this puzzle is way beyond just Kubrick. Here's the one-eyed card player in Barry Lyndon. He plays the writer who gets the ball gag stuffed in his mouth in Clockwork Orange. Patrick McGee. There's a category of Micks, too. There's Mick Murphy and Mick Gee and Mick Cartney. I got to make a list of them. I made a list of them a month ago, and then I just keep forgetting to mention them, and it's getting more important to the puzzle, so I have to start including them. So this is where we take the amalgam, And we had the Minotaur. So we have the Minotaur's horns. He's half man, half bull. And we have a man here, and we get the bull horns. We got another man here and the bull horns. And in the center of it, we have Hal's cyclopic fisheye lens reflection. So this is the man bear pig. It's a Minotaur, so it's half man and half bull. And it's a cyclops because it has one eye, so it's a cyclops giant. But it's actually both. It's a cyclops with a Minotaur horns. So this is our one-eyed Jack. It has one bullseye, just like the AE map. It has one bullseye. Just like when you shoot a rifle with a telescope, you aim the telescope at the bullseye, just like Oswald aimed at the bullseye with his magic bullet. This is his first. This is a sync with the movie Nosferatu, the first vampire movie ever. So once again, it's the first, and it's a clue to vampirism. Here's Kubrick's movie, One-Eyed Jacks. This is a veiled retelling of the Billy the Kid story. So this is one of our first Billy the Kid clues, and it's starring Marlon Brando. And the term One-Eyed Jacks in the movie means a person that promises one thing and does another. He's a two-faced person. So Karl Malden in the movie is supposed to run down the mountain and get fresh horses to help rescue Marlon Brando. And basically what happens is Karl Malden runs down the hill, and he gets fresh horses and rides off with the loot. So in the movie, Marlon Brando goes to jail for 5 or 6 years. He works in a lead mine, and he gets out of jail, and he is hell-bent for leather to find Karl Malden and kill him because Karl Malden is a one-eyed Jack, and he abandoned him. So that's a big part of the movie, but it's a one-eyed Jack. So this is another clue to cards Nadsat. A one-eyed Jack is a Jack of Spades and a Jack of Hearts. So we have a cards connection. We have a one-eyed monster connection. We have a Kubrick connection. He directs this movie. We got Kid Rio. A kid is a goat. A Billy is a goat. A sheep is a goat. So you have Alan Shepherd, and Jesus was a shepherd, and Mac Brazel was a shepherd, and Wayne Brazel was a shepherd, and the Cyclops himself was a shepherd. Odysseus actually escapes by tying themselves underneath the bellies of the sheep, and they escape out of the cave from the Cyclops after they blind him. So this is a very quintessential part of our puzzle. It's one of the really overt one-eyed Jack's clues. C-3PO in Star Wars had his leg replaced. If you watch the movie, he has one silver leg and one. So at one point, he was a one-legged robot. And another thing I want to mention is Kenny Baker is the character, R2-D2. So we have a connection into dwarfs and little people. And so once again, we're always looking for physical attributes. Another thing I didn't mention in the One-Eyed Jacks movie is Karl Malden, plays these leads with Marlon Brando. Karl Malden, he has one physical attribute, and I don't think you really have to guess what it is. He has a nose the size of the Hindenburg. So we have a connection to people with big noses now as well. So here's the Needles thing. So here's Needles, and I got this wrong in the other video. I said, "Are you chicken?" And that was wrong. He says, "What are you, yellow?" So we have a color right off the bat. So he's a red-hot chili pepper. So we got red and yellow. So we got two colors, actually. And he's a needle. He's a one-eyed Jack. We're weaving these things together. So, clearly Zemeckis and Spielberg, are alchemists. Here we have Woody Strode. So let's go. He's a first. So he's the first black professional football player. He signed at 42. He becomes the king of Hawaii when he marries the queen, which is abolished right after this happens. He plays King Neptune and his trident in Spartacus. We see Woody Strode with King Neptune's trident. And, of course, this is a connection into Battle of the Titans. So this is another Greek allegory where this puzzle is told through Greek allegories and various allegories. So we have the Battle of the Titans. We see Woody Strode in Spartacus, and he has Neptune's trident. And in the movie, he tries to kill the rich Roman patrons who paid to see the murder. And he is also our high jumper. He's the UCLA high jumper. He's teammates with Jackie Robinson, the first black professional baseball player. So we have a pair here. We have the first black professional football player, the first black professional baseball player. Bing, bing, we get a pair. One's a high jumper, one's a long jumper. So we're looking for Admiral Byrd, Operation High Jump, Long Jump. So when we jump into Halloween with Laurie Strode, so why are we copying the Strode part of his name? Well, we have one small step, we have the NASA crawler, we have the kangaroo hop, the bunny hop, one giant leap, the Christopher Clavius leap year, and we have Admiral Byrd's long jump, high jump. And, it fits right into our puzzle. And, of course, we have Blade Runner and Tom Cruise and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And so we have these various modes of transportation. And it starts with crawl and it ends with fly, which is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And the fly part of it is clues to the first in flight is the Kitty Hawk, Apollo CSM. So we have connections into all the different modes of transportation, all the way from crawling to flying. And we also have one category that is not a mode of transportation, and it's called fallen, and that's the Apollo 15 fallen astronaut, which is in this puzzle here. I'm going to show you the picture in a few minutes. So we have a connection to cards and one-eyed Jack. So we skip over to David Lynch. Now remember, we had a category of swingers. James Forrestal hangs himself at the Bethesda Mental Hospital with his robe, and the robe tears, the threads tear, so we have a sewing thread connection, and he plummets 13 floors to his death. So he was a swinger. And so we go to One-Eyed Jacks by David Lynch. Now, when you lynch somebody, you hang them. So another connection into our puzzle is all the Lincoln assassins were hung. After the Lincoln murder, they actually hung the people that were involved. Unlike the Kennedy assassination, no one really gets hung after the Kennedy assassination. But at least in the Lincoln assassination, all of them swing, and they all swing on July 7th, which is the day Anya dies. So it's already in the date puzzle anyway. And we have this, you have a golf swing, and you have a tennis racket swing, and you have Mrs. Lyndon swings, and JFK swings, and RFK swings, and Marilyn Monroe swings, and so you've got all these swingers. You've got Alan Shepard on Apollo 14 swings his golf club. The Apollo astronauts swing on cables during the actual mission. So there's a whole category of swingers. Let's close this out. No, I won't close this out. I'll leave this open. Here's another one clue. It's the one-step camera, and the only one-step camera that came with a rainbow on it. So this is a clue to our 45-degree mirror, which is used in front screen projection, and our 3M Scotchlite, our bolts of 3M Scotchlite screen that are hand sewn together to complete the Apollo fakery. And the 45-degree mirror. This is Jack Nicholson doing a two-eyed Jack. So this is one of our first playing card clues. And of course he says, "Here's Johnny." So he's sticking his head through the door saying, "Here's Johnny." Here's Johnny is the entire category of everything Jack. The picture I showed you, everything Jack Nicholson, is basically Here's Johnny. And it's all the Johnnies and the Jacks and the Jack Carpenters and the Jack Nicklaus, the golfer. And here's John Wayne, a one-eyed Jack. He plays a one-eyed Jack in his movie. Here's Hal, the one-eyed Jack. He has the one fisheye lens. He reads lips. Hal is two-faced. He lies. He cheats in chess. He conspires to murder Poole and Bowman. So he's a one-eyed Jack, and he's only got one eye. So this is our connection. It's 2001, A Space Odyssey. So if you think of Greek Odyssey, and your only sole, lone, mono clue you have is it's one eye, you can solve the puzzle already. It's the Cyclops. So, it seems like some of these steps that I'm taking are giant leaps, and when you really think about them, they're not. So this is the movie that's playing on the television set when Wendy gets the telephone call. So here's the shot right here where Wendy gets the phone call that Jack got the job. So this is a connection to Stanley Kubrick gets the moon fakery job. Oh, so she answers the phone. You get the job, and remember, Danny shines. He already knows Jack got the job before this phone call happens. So we see the phone. She's getting the call. He got the job, right? We got the terrier. Okay, we're weaving. We've got Kubrick's wicker chair, his director's chair, and it's only seen in this one scene. And this is their apartment in Boulder. So we have an Alex Colville painting right on the wall, combat correspondent. We have the Andre Dutoth movie playing on the screen, starring Randolph Scott, and the wicker director's chair. So we have a connection to someone's getting a job, Kubrick's hand-woven director's chair. It looks like his coat's in it as well. And we have a Colville painting, and we have the Andre Dutoth, the one-eyed Jack. He only has one eye, the director of this movie. And I have a picture of him somewhere. You'll get to see it. So why are we being shown this movie? This is the genius of Kubrick. He's telling you a little story allegorically, and you have to watch the movie to know what the story is. And in this movie, Andre Dutoth is the star, so it's full of stars. And Andre Dutoth is hired to dig a hole through a mountain. And it's in a remote area. And he decides that he's going to use a new method using telescopes and surveying equipment to determine two different points on the mountain, one on one side of the mountain and one on the other. And they're going to bore through the mountain and meet in the center. And that way he'll be able to dig the hole twice as fast as anyone else has ever done before. So he decides to do this, and he's taking his measurements with his surveying equipment. Remember, we had the Surveyor 1, 2, and 3 craft that land on the moon. And Apollo 12 lands within, I think, 500 feet of the Surveyor craft, which is ridiculous. But the reason we're given surveyors is they're one of the flat Earth. If you measure the curvature of the Earth for your entire life, you realize that there is none. So surveyors are a flat Earth clue. So he's using surveying equipment, and he uses a mirror on top of the mountain, I believe, to reflect the light to get the exact angle they want to meet in the center. So anyway, as he's doing this, his boss, who hired him to do this, comes along, and his boss is none too plussed about the method he's using, and he doesn't agree with it. He's like, you're never going to be able to meet in the middle. You don't know what you're doing. You're an idiot. Please stop what you're doing. And Andre Dutoth, much like Kubrick, he's in the catbird seat. He knows there's no other miner that can do the job they need to do in the time frame they need it done. So he's the only game in town. So he tells his boss, listen, I'm going to dig my freaking tunnel the way I want to dig it, and if you don't like it, you can fire me and hire somebody else. And he walks away. And this is, I think, essentially what we're seeing here is Kubrick's attitude when he was given when he got the catbird seat, and he didn't look the gift horse in the mouth, and he accepted the Apollo moon fakery. When it came right down to the nuts and bolts of it, he's like, listen, I'm going to do it, and I'll do it any damn way I want to. And if you don't like it, you can hire somebody else. And NASA was really in a tight place. They needed Kubrick. He was the only one capable of pulling something like this off, and he knew it. And he used this bravado. We see the Wild Child and the Manipulator books in the meeting with... when Danny sees the doctor, we see the Wild Child book and the Manipulator book. So these are the two different Jungian sides of Kubrick's personality. And he's a one-eyed Jack. And part of the one-eyed Jack clues to the directors is when a director is filming a movie, he's only looking out one eye. He's looking through one lens. It's the fisheye lens or the zoom lens or the super low-light lens that he borrows from NASA. So all these directors are in the one-eyed Jack category. So Andre Dutoth is literally a one-eyed Jack. He only has one eye. Let me see if I can find the picture of him. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I'll show it to you later. So John Ford's a one-eyed director. He works with Woody Strode. And so this movie is very clever because it ties in that Kubrick is getting the job to fake the moon missions. Oh, you got the job, Jack. We have this woven wicker chair, director's chair, that we see numerous times in the making of The Shining. And there's no doubt about it. This is Kubrick's chair. We see Wendy sitting in the chair, which is a clue that Wendy's born July 7th. She's married July 7th. She marries a Samson, which is the missing ship from the Titanic disaster. So she talks about a ghost ship. Barry Ullman says, by 5 o'clock, you'll never know anybody was here. And she goes, like a ghost ship? So we're given clues to Titanic, the Molly Brown capsule, a ghost ship, you know. And so this movie, it's only seen for a split second, but it's so clever because it ties into all this stuff. And it also ties into David Randolph Scott. David Randolph Scott is the man that does the Falcon Feather hammer drop on Apollo 15. Apollo 15 is the mission that launches on Stanley Kubrick's birthday. And of course, the name of the movie is Carson City, and we have here's Johnny Carson, is a comedian. He's the king of late night. So every one of these clues ties together, and so this movie is a short allegorical explanation of Kubrick's attitude toward faking the Apollo moon missions, and his attitude was he was going to take over the entire project and manipulate anyone he could, any way he could, to hide his secret message in, and that's what he'd volunteered to slay the Minotaur. So this is Kubrick volunteering to do the Apollo missions. He got the job. Here's his director's chair. Here's the Andre de Toth One-Eyed Jack movie. Here's the Alex Colville terrier painting. So we have two different clues to weaving and terriers, the one-eyed needle. And another thing, Wendy's wearing two Union suits. And so I think it's a connection into Mrs. Lincoln, but it's kind of weak. But she is wearing two of these red suits at the same time. She's not wearing one. There's one on top of the other. And I'll find a picture of that. And it's not related to One-Eyed Jacks, but it's interesting. So here's our David Randolph Scott clue. Here's our Randolph clue. We have Randolph Mantooth is in Emergency 51. So we see the Emergency 51 lunchbox. So we have Randolph Mantooth. We have Randolph Scott. We have David Randolph Scott, the Apollo 15 astronaut. We have the Scots category. The Scots category is ridiculous. Let me see. I don't know if I could find it. Ridley Scott, Tony Scott. You've got Miss Scott. You've got the Scott toilet tissue. You have Robert Falcon Scott, George C. Scott, David Randolph Scott, which is the one I just went over. You have Scott Carpenter, Apollo. David Randolph Scott is Apollo as well. Scott Grissom is the son of Gus Grissom. He's the man that was burned up in the Apollo 1 fire. And Scott Grissom has said publicly that his father was murdered. You have Tony Scott, which is Ridley Scott's brother. He jumps off a bridge. He takes he flew over the cuckoo's nest over the bridge. So did Tony Scott really kill himself? I don't know, but he's a redhead and he jumped off a bridge. So, and then we have Randolph Scott that's in the movie. So Randolph Scott and David Randolph Scott are clues to the Apollo 15 mission as well. And so let me minimize this. Let's go back to, so let's close this. We covered this. We know what this is. Kubrick gets hired to fake the moon missions. We have the one-eyed clues in 2001. They're flashing all these, and of course the colors. Something about the movies pointed out that the colors, which I had noticed and had not mentioned. So she's beginning to shine on her own now. And you'll notice that these colors are very similar to the colors that we see when we do their little color puzzles. And also we see this, we see the green and purple color. If you look at the prostitute in Full Metal Jacket, she's wearing the same green and purple color that we see in our color decode puzzles. And I also find it fascinating that the two of the videos that I can't find when I do a Google search are the ones on the color puzzle. So apparently somebody doesn't really want people to see that color puzzle thing. So that's fascinating. So we have the NASA crawler. We have One Small Step. We have Camera Walk is the sign seen in The Shining. We have Johnny Walker. We have Spacewalker. We have Blade Runner. We have Tom Cruise. We have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We have Easy Rider. We have Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So they're all modes of transportation. You can hitchhike, you can walk, you can run, you can high jump, you can long jump. But if you can't crawl, you're fallen. And so this is the fallen astronaut. So this fits right into her walking Strode, Woody Strode, Laurie Strode, Johnny Walker, Spacewalker, Moonwalker. And so this is the fallen astronaut. So here's a list. It looks very much like a playing card that they left on the moon on Apollo 15. So this is the mission that launches on Stanley's birthday. And this is the Kubrick they leave on the moon. Very clever. And if you notice, this Kubrick has no arms, so it's missing its arms already. So we have a category of a one-eyed Jack. We have a category of a one-leg man from Barry Lyndon. So now we have a man that has no arms. And you'll notice throughout this puzzle so far, we're being given people with one missing pair. So you have a pair of eyes, a pair of ears, a pair of legs. So this will come into the puzzle later. I'm not going to go any further. But this is the fallen astronaut. So he fits right into the walking, crawling, fallen. And he couldn't make the high jump. Here's another one. It's the Apollo 1 capsule. They don't actually use the numeral. They always spell out O-N-E on the Apollo 1. So this is the first. It's the first category. It's the first Apollo mission. They all die. All three die. So this is Gus Grissom and his son Scott, who says he was murdered. This is from the Simpsons show, a highly alchemical show filled with stuff. So this episode is Bart Goes to Australia. So when Bart goes to Australia, they supply the Simpsons with a U.S. toilet that spins the correct direction. Because remember, when you're in Australia, your toilet spins the other way. This is the whole Coriolis toilet lie. So it turns out I'm actually quite knowledgeable on Coriolis because I have a friend of mine who sells these things called Coriolis meters. And the Coriolis force is a very real force. If you've ever had a garden hose and you leave the end on and you turn the hose on and it starts whipping around in a circle, that's the Coriolis force. So it's a very real, well, actually it's called a fictitious force. It's not a real force. It's just the fact that you're accelerating a liquid down a tube so it starts spinning. But the Coriolis they're telling us that we should be seeing is because the Earth is rotating, and since the Earth imparts a certain angular velocity to the water as it drains, it'll spin one way all the time. So if we were really rotating, this force would really happen in a toilet, but since we don't rotate, it doesn't really happen. So how do they get around that? Well, they actually cast in the porcelain jet, so they favor one direction or the other. So when the Simpsons, I know I'm going on here, but you're going to love this. So the Simpsons go to Australia, and they have to have the correct rotation in their toilet, so they supply them this toilet, and this toilet's been, had these special jets flown in and installed on it, so it spins the correct direction. So why is this photograph in the one-eyed Jacks category? Well, it turns out a vortex only has one eye. So you have a hurricane has one eye, and a tornado has one eye. So a Coriolis toilet, as it's spinning, it has a one eye. It's called the whirlpool. So in 2001: A Space Odyssey, we see the whirlpool insignia. And of course you have Vertigo, which is Hitchcock's movie, and so this is John Ford. So we already have the Ford Mustang and the Falcon. And once again, this puzzle is tied together 50 ways till Tuesday. So we have John Ford. He's a one-eyed Jack. His last name is Ford. We have the Ford Mustang, the Pinto, then the Bronco. And he makes movies with John Wayne and Woody Strode. Now, Woody Strode, we already went through. He's the first black football player. And the UCLA teammate, high jumper with Jackie Robinson, the first black baseball player. So this gives you the cross-pollination between all these clues. So he's a Ford, he's a one-eyed Jack, he's a filmmaker, and by proxy, even if he had two eyes, if he's a filmmaker, he's a one-eyed Jack because you put one eye up to the film camera to make the movie. This is Austin Powers, and I think this is 2. It doesn't really matter which one it is. So you got Rob Lowe, and he plays number 1, the young number 1, and he's got the one eye, and so number 1 is pee, and number 2 is poop. So in this movie, you have number 1 and number 2. Well, this is a clever connection to the first Star Trek episode. You have the first and only episode Gene Roddenberry writes is entitled "The Cage," and his wife plays number 1 on Star Trek. So this is a connection to Star Trek. It's a connection to One-Eyed Jacks. And so later in the movie, they go through the time machines, a time travel connection, and it becomes Wagner, probably the last man that saw Natalie Wood alive, and he has the eye patch again. And Austin Powers, or Dr. Evil, calls him his cycloptic friend. So we have a connection to the Cyclops, we have a connection to One-Eyed Jacks, we have a connection to number 1 from Star Trek, number 2, P and Pooh, and so this language is being used by many directors in many movies. Here we have Needles, and what are you, yellow? Are you chicken? So we have a color, and we have Mr. Parkinson's. So here's Dr. Kimball. He's in stasis, and he is murdered by Hal, the one-eyed monster Jack, and the one-eyed fisheye. So Dr. Kimball is the same character that we see in that Harrison Ford, once again we have another Ford, plays, and he's looking for the one-armed man. So it's a one-armed man clue. And it's also a connection to Harrison Ford in the movie about Dr. Kimball, the fugitive. So Kubrick was like a fugitive. Once Kubrick did all these alchemical things in the Apollo missions, he was blackballed. He was a marked man. So he had to be very careful where he went and what he ate and who he saw. And he's liking himself to, he was like Wendy, locked in the bathroom, but his bathroom had no window in it. There was no way to escape from Kubrick's bathroom. He did all these little alchemical things, and he knew at some point they were going to be figured out. And when they get figured out, the Minotaur comes, and there is no magic thread to get away from the Minotaur. So here we have Wendy Carlos, and so this goes into its Jungian thing. So we have the ego, and we have the shadow, and we have the light and the dark, and the self, and it's a Jungian thing, and it's a peace button, and it's born to kill. So Wendy Carlos transitions from male to female. She's flipping from one orientation to the other. So this is a Jungian thing. So we see in Full Metal Jacket you have Joker, and he's all happy-go-lucky, and he's they call me the Joker, and he pretends like nothing really affects him. In reality, he doesn't really want to be there. He doesn't want to kill people. He's not a killer. He tries to do his war face, and he's like, you don't scare me, So he's a one-eyed Jack, He pretends one thing, and, So it turns out Fritz Lang was also a one-eyed Jack. And so here's Kubrick's super secret NASA spy satellite. It's a spy satellite lens. Really? We know satellites are a crock of shit, so this isn't a spy satellite lens. This is just a lens that he borrows from NASA. So he's a one-eyed Jack. He uses the one lens. And of course, it's just part of his Kubrick lens clues. He has the fisheye lens he uses in 2001, and there's the super long zooms he makes a point of in Barry Lyndon, and he has the super low light NASA spy lens that he borrows from NASA, and of course they loan it to him. So his lens clues they go on and on. And he talks. Another one I haven't mentioned that's really clever is Peter Sellers in Dr. Strangelove says. They mention something about when you were in the Japanese prison camp, did they torture you? And then he mentions, the Japanese, they tortured me, but he goes, they make such bloody good cameras. So he gives you Japanese cameras as a clue set. So we have Admiral Byrd, and we have his ship, the Mount Olympus, and of course Olympus is a very famous Japanese camera maker. So here we have the One-Eyed Jack's playing card allegory. Here are the two One-Eyed Jack cards. Then we have the Alan Parsons Project album where they use the One-Eyed King on it, and they have the Frank Lloyd Wright windows behind it. So it's this is another part of our puzzle. We're using cards. We're using pairs and flushes and straights. I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to save that for later. Save this for later. Save this for later. Here's Dr. Strangelove. So we have the B-52 technician, and he's doing card tricks. So his name is Ace. Aces are 1 or 11. So you got the Apollo 1 mission, and you got the Apollo 11 mission. Apollo 1 was the first. They all die. Apollo 11 is the first moon landing. So they're both first. And he plays Ace. And his pilot, his captain, is Major King Kong. So a King Kong is two kings, and we got an ace here, so we can make 21 with that. Here's the fallen astronaut Kubrick, I mentioned earlier it looks like a clothespin. It also looks like a cowboy. Cowboys get bow-legged when they ride horses a lot. And once again, it's missing its arms have been cut off. Here's Bud Rosenthal. He worked with Kubrick. He's in the Remembering Kubrick video. He spoke very fondly of Kubrick and how he was a genius. And he's a one-eyed Jack. He has one glass eye. And I think it was corrected by something about the movies, or yeah, I think it was something about the movies. I was calling him Ken Adam, and it wasn't Ken Adam. Here's the big head and the little head, shower head. So if you got the little head, that's your dick. That's your Peter's projection. That's your Adam's probe. That's your one-eyed trouser monster. So we have a category of one-eyed jacks, and clearly your penis is a one-eyed jack. So we have the big head and the little head. So the little head is what we use to find the dicks category, like Dick Nixon and Lyndon Johnson and Barry Lyndon and Peter Sellers, and I've made lists of these. The dick category is like 2 pages. And so we're using all these ridiculous slang terms for your Dick, your Johnson, your Peter, so it's a one-eyed monster. And of course we know this because the shower heads disappear. Heads is a category. Heads is the redhead bathroom. I want that head so clean. And Virgin Mary. Once again, Virgin Mary is a biblical clue again. It's another thread. So here we have Odysseus and the Cyclops. So this is the giant Cyclops that Odysseus blinds with his spear. And after they blind the Cyclops, who's a shepherd, it's another shepherd clue, they tie themselves underneath the bellies of the sheep and they walk out of the cave. And since he's blind, he can't see them, so he feels the top of the sheep and he can't sense that they're under. So this is part of our allegorical puzzle. We have to blind the Cyclops before we can escape. And of course, the Cyclops is a cycloptic being. It only has one eye. And part of this puzzle is if you only have one eye, you can't detect parallax as you can. You know, if you have stereoscopic vision like we do, you can detect parallax changes. But apparently, even people with 2 eyes can't really detect parallax changes because we never notice that the night sky never changes. It's the same today as it was 3,000 years ago, which if you understand 3D parallax is totally impossible. And you couple 3D parallax with the fact that we're traveling at all these amazing speeds and we're rotating and we're spinning and all this other crap, you come to the conclusion that even though we have 2 eyes, we're all one-eyed jacks. We don't see the parallax problem. We don't even think about it because we don't normally think. We're not encouraged to think. Here's Andre Dutoth. He directs the movie with Randolph Scott in it. And he's a one-eyed jack. He's got one eye. Here's Fall's wife. He marries a one-legged. I think this whole marriage was basically arranged just as a joke. And I think she was in on the joke as well. So she's a one-legged fashion model. You know, Paul McCartney's nicknames. Let's go over Paul McCartney's nicknames because they are fascinating. You have Buffalo Bill. Now, the term buffalo, if somebody says, oh, he buffaloed me, you fooled me. So he's got Buffalo Bill. Billy is a sheep. And you got Billy Shears. We're talking about Collins axes and bread knives. And he chopped his family up and stacked them neatly. So he's Billy Shears. You use shears to shear sheep. So a Billy is a sheep. You have Apollo C. Vermouth. Vermouth is used to make a Manhattan. So you have Apple Records. Ringo means apple in Chinese. And you've got Willie and the Pepper Pots. This is the band he was rumored to have been in before he became Fall. So Billy is a goat, and these clues are peppered throughout. This is how the language works. We pepper clues, alchemical clues in that are all part of a thread. So she's the one-eyed fashion model. And I think she was in a girly magazine. I looked for her in Playboy, and I couldn't find it. I thought she was in Playboy, but I could be wrong. But I think she was in another British kind of girly magazine thing, so she's a bunny. This is interesting. Let's view this. Zoom in. We can see the one-eared man over here. This man has one ear. So we have the Van Gogh painting, Prisoners Walk in Circles. And we have the Van Gogh book, Nicole raps, and he's a one-eared redhead. So it fits right in with her one-eared, one arm, one leg. Let's go to. So there's the one-eyed card player in Barry Lyndon. So they developed their own card NADSAT cheating language. When Barry asks him if he wants a glass of water, he's telling him that his opponent has a stronger hand. When he tells him he wants a glass, he asks him if he wants a glass of wine, it means he's got the other guy beat. So they have clues to every card in the deck they've memorized. They have, so this is an entire language they developed, and they developed this language to fool the elite to steal money from them. And so this is one of our clues to we're looking for cards NADSAT. One-eyed Jack is a Jack of Spades, Jack of Hearts. A Rafter Man is also known as an Admiral, which is a 2-4-4-2 combo, Deuce 4 combo. And a Joker is a Joker, and a Major King Kong is 2 kings, and a Twin Peaks is 2 aces, and yada yada yada. Ann Mark is Queen of Vegas. Let's go to. So here's Barry Lyndon, and Barry Lyndon has a duel. Once I said duels are a thread. Robert Falcon Scott and Raoul Amundsen were in a duel to make it to the South Pole, and Raoul gets there, and he gets there first, and Robert Falcon Scott gets there 33 hours later, supposedly, and he's frozen to death. And the only reason we know that is this was diary. And once again, diaries are a thread. Marilyn Monroe had a diary, and Matthew Modine has a diary in Full Metal Jacket, and in Lolita, Humbert has a diary. He has 2 first names. He's an 11. This is another smoking clue in Barry Lyndon. She asks him to please stop smoking, and he inhales on his pipe and blows it right in her face. So these smoking clues are strewn throughout this puzzle. They're not just Robert Oppenheimer. This is a ball hair clue. So we have the ball hair in here. We have the ball hair. This woman, she's the first black James Bond love interest, and she's a Playboy bunny. David Bowie, he has the 2 different eyes. He's a one-eyed Jack. He does Major Tom to ground control. So he's alchemical. I'm not going to get to that yet. So we have the Twin Pines, Lone Pine. So we have the Lone Ranger, and we have Bird's Book, Alone, and we have Lee Harvey Oswald, the Lone Nut, which is one of our crazy threads. So the Twin Pines Mall turns into the Lone Pine after Marty drives over the pine tree. So this is a very clever clue because we have a connection to woods. We have, you have the Pinewood Studios in Great Britain. You have a connection to the Twins, and you have a connection to 21 Blackjack. And of course, when you flip 1:16 a.m. over, it's 9/11. And this one they got it wrong. It was 1:33, so it had the 33 in it. So this movie is, it's so alchemical, it's ridiculous. Just this right here, that it's using this language. And you have Doc Brown, and his dog is named Copernicus, So who creates the Copernican model? I think that's Copernicus. So, we have connections into Flat Earth, and we see the Flat Earth clock in the first scenes of the movie, and Pluto, the god of the underworld, and the Neptune under the sea dance, and here's the missing arm, Kubrick, that's left on the moon on Apollo 15. One-eyed card players. So we have the azimuthal equidistant projection. It has 24 slices, and each slice is divided into 12 pieces. So if this was a pie, you'd have 288 pie wedges for your overlook ball, and then there would be one wedge left over. It would be the bullseye, because there's only one bullseye on this. So when we combine a Minotaur and a cyclops, the Minotaur is half man, half bull, so it's got 2 bullseyes. And the cyclops only has 1 eye. So if we combine a cyclops with a Minotaur, we end up with a bull with 1 eye, which is exactly what we have here. This is all bullshit, and it's got 1 eye. It's got 1 bullseye. So this is the main one-eyed Jack bullseye thing that we're looking for. And of course the moon is a one-eyed Jack because it has the jade rabbit on it. And let's open that up. So here's the one-eyed jade rabbit. It's a one-eyed Jack. So the moon has a rabbit on it, so it's a jackrabbit. A jack is a male rabbit, just like Jack Elam, and Elam is a palindrome for male, so Jack is a male rabbit. And we only ever see one side of the moon, so we're only ever going to see one eye of the one-eyed Jack. And let's go to, what else do we got here? There's the one-eyed card player, card shark. He cheats people in cards, just like Hal cheats in chess. He's a one-eyed Jack. Here's another ball hair clue. So this ball hair clue isn't just in one movie. We have the ball caps in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and a lot of this woman Edwina Carroll. She's in the UFO TV show, I believe. I gotta check that. But there's like a lot of these women that are playing stewardesses in 2001. They all end up with Ed Bishop in the UFO TV show. So we have the ball hair theme, the ball cap, the ball players, the pinball. We got foosball, we got billiard balls, we got Woody Strode the football, we got Jackie Robinson baseball, Billie Jean King tennis, ping pong. All the balls are represented. So they're all games. They're not real. They're just games. It's like pictures in a book, Danny. It's not real. So this is, I mentioned in earlier videos that there's a projection that looks like a butterfly. So this is the butterfly projection here. And we have the butterfly diorama that we see in The Shining. There's a butterfly diorama when Jack gets his breakfast. This is Capricorn 1. We're always 1, 1, 1. It's repeated over. The first, the uni, the mono, the lone. When you have a Galileo invents the telescope, the first telescope. So we have the Galileo hammer drop, falcon feather drop on Apollo 15. So we have the telescope ready. And when you have a rifle and you have a telescope, you have the crosshairs. Now remember, the crosshairs are missing in many of the Apollo still shot photographs. They're missing the crosshairs. Well, where do you place the crosshair when you're shooting your rifle? You put them on the bullseye. One bullseye. So here's how the cycloptic one-eyed Jack, lying psychopathic computer that cheats at chess, and he's telling Dave Bowman, Apollo's attribute, he's a Bowman, and Frank Poole, where they fake the underwater spacewalks in a swimming pool, and Hal tells him the gyro's failing, and the gyro isn't failing. The gyro just never rotates because the Earth doesn't rotate. So it's a one-eyed, fish-eyed computer, like the Cyclops, with the one bullseye. So this is our Minotaur clue. It's half man, half bull. There's our bull horns. It's a man. It's got the bull horns. It's half man and bull. So it's not a Cyclops yet. It's a half man bull. This is our Minotaur. So we're using two different allegories here. We're using the Minotaur allegory, which is the magic thread, and we're using the Cyclops allegory, which is the one-eyed Jack. You can't see parallax. You can't detect parallax. You only have one eye. Matthew Modine is a one-eyed Jack. You know, he's born to kill on his helmet, but he's got the peace button on his jacket. So he's torn between these two worlds. He doesn't want to kill anybody. He's like, you know, all these young men that join the military, you know, they don't know what they're getting into. They don't have any clue, and they watch a few John Wayne movies, and they get all hyped up, and they think they're killers. And in reality, they're babies. They have no idea what the consequences of their actions are going to be. And Modine is, you know, torn. He has to force himself to shoot the young girl. And he only shoots her because he wants to put her out of her misery, not because he wants to kill her. So he's a one-eyed Jack. You know, he pretends to be all hard-ass and, they call me the Joker. And really, he doesn't want to kill people. And then this represents the soldier, you know. You know, here we have the one arm, the one leg, the one eye, the one ear, and Luke loses his arm. He's a one-armed man now. He gets it replaced with a prosthetic, but it's still one. Still missing it. There's another ball hair clue. So the ball hairs are just ridiculous. You know, this hat that we see in 2001, the ball cap with Edwina Carroll. I just had it here. Where the hell did it go? Huh, I must have closed it. So we jump in, we go to a David Lynch movie. Remember, we have swingers. So when you hang somebody on a rope, they swing. So when Lincoln gets murdered, they hang all the Lincoln murderers on July 7th, which is the Anya Kubrick date. And unlike the Kennedy killing, no one gets hung after the Kennedy killing. We put Lee Harvey Oswald in a box, and we don't talk about it after that. So we got the One-Eyed Jacks with David Lynch. When you lynch somebody, you hang them. So Lynch is a swinger by proxy. So we have the One-Eyed Jacks movie, and it's starring Cheryl Lee. So we already have a category of Lees. We have Lee Ermey and Jamie Lee Curtis and General Lee and what's the other one? Lee Harvey Oswald and Christopher Lee. So there's a category of Lees already. So when we find Cheryl Lee, she fits right into the puzzle. She's in this movie, Twin Peaks, which is Two Aces, and she plays a homecoming queen. And so, she fits in 7 Ways Till Sunday. So let's close out these ball hair things. We don't need these anymore. They're not One-Eyed Jacks, they're just ball hair. I just wanted to include them because I didn't really get to them. So there's the bullseye. The one bullseye on the dartboard. The only organized game Danny plays in The Shining. There's the one bullseye again. This is the first category. It's the first time we ever see a Bell video, any video phone. It's the first Bell video phone ever at the World's Fair. So it's the first. So let's go to the first category now, because we've been doing all these One-Eyed Jacks and One-Armed Men. It's all one. Let me go over the Cord Meyer one before we close. This is a new one I found, and it's very clever. And I don't have all the parts of it, and I'm not 100% on it, but it's compelling enough where I think you'll see it. And I don't see the Cord Meyer pick. Let's find this. Let's do this first. All right. So let's go over the Cord Meyer thing. So Cord Meyer is this gentleman right here. And Cord Meyer was married to Mary Pinchot Meyer. And here she is. She's younger here. But here's this Cord when he was a young man. And this is his wife. And she ends up having an affair with JFK. JFK was a man whore, I mean, this man he'd mount a chair if it had a hole in it. So he's having this affair with her, and at some point in time, Cord Meyer finds out about it, and he's none too happy about it. He does not like what's going on, and he's madly in love with his wife, and the leader of the free world is mounting her. So Cord Meyer did not like Kennedy. He was not his favorite person, and he really couldn't do much about it because he can't tell him to stop doing his wife because he doesn't have the power to do that. And apparently she was infatuated enough with JFK that she didn't really want to end it either. So E. Howard Hunt, on his deathbed, does a video, and his son actually records the video. And E. Howard Hunt admits that he was one of the 3 tramps in Dealey Plaza. And he also admits that he was involved in the murder of JFK. He was on the team. He was on the team that murdered them. And he says in this deathbed confession that they put Cord Meyer in charge of the assassination because they knew Cord Meyer hated JFK so much that he would have no problem organizing a murder. So to top all this off, it turns out Cord Meyer is a one-eyed man. He lost his eye in the Second World War, and he wore a prosthetic eye. And you used to be able to find pictures of Cord Meyer online with the eye patch on, but apparently those have been scrubbed. You don't find those anymore. So he's a one-eyed Jack, and so I can't connect it to the puzzle yet, but it just fits the puzzle too well to not be part of it. We have Camelot Crater on the Apollo 15 mission, and Camelot was the nickname for the Kennedy White House because everybody was banging everyone, and his nickname was Lancer, which is an association with Lancelot. So why am I? The only connection I do have for these is they're swingers. JFK is swinging with Marilyn Monroe. He's swinging with this lady. Pretty much any skirt that wanders into the White House, he tries to mount. And so when they go to kill him, they put Cord Meyer in charge of the assassination. So it makes perfect sense, and he's a one-eyed Jack. And so we have a swingers category. We have a one-eyed Jack category. Here's Cord Meyer. He died. And another thing I didn't mention is JFK was so irresponsible. I mean, you can draw a direct association between Marilyn Monroe dying and this woman dying to JFK and RFK. They would carry on these affairs with these women, and when they got tired of them or they became dangerous, like Marilyn Monroe, they just had them whacked. They just kill them, and it's just ridiculous. And they always make him out to be a hero. And he really, here he is with her, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. It's ridiculous. So he's one-eyed Jack. So let's go into this one here. So we have all these people, and you have a pair of eyes, and you have a pair of arms, you have a pair of legs, you have two balls, and two ears, but you only have one nose. So Tycho is not a one-eyed Jack. Tycho is the no-nose man. So there's only one other no-nose man in the puzzle, and it's Michael Jackson, the last moonwalker. And he's in the puzzle already because he's the king of pop. So we have the no-nose man. Well, it turns out you have one nose, you have one mouth, you have one Peters projection, mineshaft, Johnson, dick, and you have one anus. So if you have an anus, you can have a brown eye. If you have a dick, you can have a one-eyed trouser monster. So these two things, your anus and your dick, can be eyes as well. So he's the no-nose man. He's the anomaly in this puzzle. Everybody else is missing one of the pairs. They're missing one of their pairs of their legs, their pairs of their ears, their pairs of their eyes, their pairs of their arms. So this, when I said earlier, when you solve Kubrick's puzzle, it'll be the no-nose, redhead, first man to discover the stars show no parallax with a fake mustache. It really is. And of course, he loses his nose in a math duel. So it's interesting. So let's go to Cheryl Lee. Let's close. These are the ball hair clues, the hairball clues. So Cheryl Lee ends up being the homecoming queen. So we have a card connection. We have the one-eyed Jack's card connection. It's a club. So it's a one-eyed Jack's club. We had the Bone Club. So she jumps into this David Lynch movie, Twin Peaks. And also I wanted to mention that Kubrick talks about in interviews that before the filming of The Shining began, he forced all of the cast to watch David Lynch's movie Eraserhead, which is a bizarre movie, and I'm not going to get into it right now. So we have a couple connections to David Lynch. We have the swingers. When you lynch somebody, they're hanging, they're swung. We have the one-eyed Jacks. We have Twin Peaks as two aces. And we have Cheryl Lee. She fits in the Lee category. Turns out Cheryl Lee is born on Earth Day, the same day that Jack Nicholson is born, the same day that Robert Oppenheimer is born. And it's the first day of the 1964 World's Fair. And so we have a connection into her birthday. We have a connection to Earth Day. We have a connection to Jack Nicholson's birthday. We have a connection into I Am Become Death, Robert Oppenheimer. We have a connection into Nixon dies on her birthday, Tricky Dick. So we already had a connection to Dicks and Tricky Dick. We had the ceramic penis to Tricky Dick. Johnson, Peter, mineshaft, Peter's projection, the one-eyed monster. So my point here is other directors are using this. She's in the movie Vampires, which is directed by John Carpenter, a different director. He's already in our puzzle with Halloween, the first day at the Overlook. The Vampires movie starring James Woods, a class of golf clubs. And in the movie, James Woods says to the Padre, he says, "Padre, when you killed that vampire, did you get wood?" And the Padre replies, "Mahogany, teak, ebony." So we have the Woods category already in our puzzle. So David Lynch and John Carpenter are clearly using this puzzle language. This is the first unibody car. So we have the monolith. Mono means one. We have the firsts. We have the Apollo 1 capsule. We have the TMA-1. Let's go to the first for a minute, and that's going to be a little sidetrack, but it's all related. This is all related to how this puzzle is woven together. Let's go down here. Where the hell is it now? Let me pause this while I find it. I love this pause feature. Alright, here we go. This isn't the full list, but so this gives you an idea of how the 1-1, Apollo 1, Apollo 11, the first, the lone, the mono, the uni is repeated over and over. And you have Napoleon, the first emperor of France. Lenin's first day of peace is 1-1, New Year's Eve, the first day of the year. The first moon landing, Danny's first movie, the first atomic detonation, the first Bell videophone, the first Mustang, the first unibody car, the first Falcon, the first black pro football player, the first black pro baseball player, the first man to the North Pole, the first man to the South Pole, Raoul Davidson. The first satellite is invented by Arthur C. Clarke, the father of the satellite. The first U.S. ship to circumnavigate the globe is the Columbia. The first moon landing is Apollo 11. The first man to get Lou Gehrig's disease is Lou Gehrig. Aces are 1 or 11. Humbert has 2 first names. Ace is the name of the CRM tech. It's 1. Marilyn Monroe is the first Playboy playmate. Bridget Fonda, her first movie is Easy Rider. Jamie Lee Curtis, her first movie is Halloween. The B-52's first flight is April 15th. Gary Lockwood is the first Star Trek guest star on the first Star Trek, and he rips Shatner's handmade one-off shirt. TMA-1, Ares 1B, Discovery 1, Capricorn 1, a bicycle made for 2, so there's a clue. The first song sung by an IBM computer is Daisy Daisy. The first trans-Antarctic crossing is Vivian Fuchs. The first transpolar crossing in an airship is Vivian Fuchs. It was named the Norg, which is the same name we see on the Bell Jet Ranger in The Thing is Norg. So it's a key to the Norwegian base, which would be the Amundsen Scott Antarctic base. This clue here I'm going to retract. The Shining, I believe it's the first digitally edited movie ever, but I can't prove it, and there's really not a lot of information on this. There's a lot of information on the editing system that he used, but there's no one that's coming out and saying it was the first movie ever edited. But the first digital editing system really came out in 1980, right before 1980. So there really couldn't have been any other movie before 1980 that was digitally edited. They were very crude television editing systems, but so we'll leave this one out for now. We'll forget that it's the first digitally edited. And the reason he digitally edits is because we know he hides in his color puzzles with it. The Blue Marble is the first and only photograph of Earth we had for 37 or 32 years or something. And it's taken by Eugene Cernan, the last man on the moon. The first day at the Overlook is October 31st, Halloween Day. It's a holiday clue. Let's see what else. Let's go down a little further. The first Steadicam ever made was made by Garrett Brown. Its first usage is in the movie Halloween. Another really interesting clue I found out is the mask that Michael Myers wears in the movie Halloween is actually a William Shatner Star Trek Captain Kirk mask that's been spray painted white. So you have a direct connection to Captain Kirk, Star Trek, right in the movie itself, in the masks, So we have the masked ball in Eyes Wide Shut, In Eyes Wide Shut, we also have the little masks that are on in Helena's bedroom on the wall. We have the picture with Vivian Kubrick, who's sitting right here, and she's at her editing station, and there's the masks hanging on the wall behind her. You have the Lone Ranger. He wears a mask. So mask is a thread. I haven't found them all yet, but it's another thread. Danny's first movie, the first Bell Videophone. Lou Gehrig is the first to get Lou Gehrig's. And so these clues, and I'm going to put a list under this video. I'll put all the firsts. And when you see the entire list of firsts, it's ridiculous. So this is the first unibody car ever. It's a Mustang. It's a horse. It's a falcon. It's sister car, which is a bird. It's the 1964 World's Fair. We have Mr. Ford, and we have the one-off Ford Lincoln Mercury double suicide door bubble top Lincoln. There's the one-eyed amalgam of the Minotaur and the Cyclops. So it's a one bullseye Minotaur. So you're in a maze, and the maze you're in only has one bullseye. It's the azimuthal equidistant map. And a needle only has one eye. And I think that is the full one-eyed jacks category. I'm going to put, well, I shouldn't say the full. I'm going to put all the one-eyed jacks underneath this. I'm going to put all the firsts underneath this as well. And I finally have a working microphone system now. There's my old helmet. So I used to love that thing. I used to run around the yard, and oh my God, I was glued to the set. I didn't see all the Apollo missions, but I definitely was glued to the set when the Apollo 13 disaster happened. And my mother would come home, and she'd be like, oh, because everyone was afraid they were going to die in space. And my father would be like, turn off that television. We can't watch that. They were all scared they were going to die. So there was mind control on a level that you can't even imagine. People were watching these, and initially, and then after a few missions, they died off. Nobody really watched them anymore. Oh, and here's another good one. This is clever. So if we go to Scrabble Cheat, and one of the missing flat Earth clues in this puzzle was Samuel Rowbotham. So we go Rowbotham. I'm not sure if I'm spelling this right here, but I'll know in a second if I spelled it right, because it's going to spell the word I want. So you go to Scrabble Sheet and you put in Rowbotham and you hit submit. And what's the largest word you can make with Rowbotham? Bathroom. Isn't that interesting? So, I find that interesting. And that's it for part 50. I'm going to delete the other 50 video. It's useless in its current form. And once again, I apologize for the audio problems. I'm in the 21st century now. I've got the screen capture software working. I can now pause it. I haven't edited anything yet. I'm not really into editing. Kubrick loved to edit. I am probably the Jungian polar opposite of Kubrick. I like to do it in one take if I can. But now I have the software, I have a working microphone, and that's it. You guys have a great night. I hope you enjoy this video better than the last one. And it's not a direct repeat of the last one. I added a lot of stuff in. And have a great night, guys. Later.